The following is a paid commercial announcement. The view of the following program does not necessarily reflect those of the staff, management, or sponsors of News Radio 1180 WHAM.
Now on 50,000 Watt News Radio 1180 WHAM. This is Ask the Experts. Grab a line now at 222-1180. Star 1180, a free call for Verizon Wireless subscribers, or the One Communications line at 1-800-295-1180. Now live from the WHAM studios in downtown Rochester, it's Ask the Experts.
Good evening and welcome to Simply Green Radio, brought to you by Simply Green Energy and Mr. Reuter Plumbing. Simply Green Radio, Ask the Experts. A website we'd like to give out, folks, mysimplygreenenergy.com. mysimplygreenenergy.com. A pleasure to have back in studio tonight Maurice Aubrey, Mo, a project manager at Simply Green Energy, specializing in renewable energy. Pete Morisi, True Story Pete, the project manager for renewable energy at Mr. Reuter Plumbing, specializing in water conservation and its green division. Brenna Hartman normally in studio with us. Brenna Hartman, a Fixie Chick and the founder of HealthyHomesOfRochester.com. Brenna is away today, and the person who is filling in for Brenna tonight, no stranger to Wham Radio, Jim Salmon, our home repair inspector and home repair expert. So,
good evening.
A pleasure to have the three of you here in studio.
Yeah, welcome, Jim.
Thank you, sir.
Glad to have you in. It's short notice.
Well, that's fine. We can do short notice.
You know, I got to tell you, and I hope I'm not going to get myself in trouble here, but I know Brenna is a married woman and she's away, but, let's face it, I'm jealous of Mo because he gets to sit next to Brenna, and then I got to look at you on a Sunday.
Yeah, there is a difference.
It's going to be an interesting hour. Hey, let's start things off, Mo, right off the bat. We do this every week, but I want our folks who may be tuning in for the first week today.
Sure.
Talk to me about Simply Green Energy. What types of products do you offer? What are we talking about here? Because I know we always talk about reducing your carbon footprint or saving money, saving energy, and saving the earth.
Right. Well, that's it. Simply Green Energy is a company that's basically all about, if you want a net zero energy home, we're the company that you come to. We, specialize in first of all, in geothermal heating and cooling system, which we have an expert in our studio this evening that we're going to get into a lot more about. So that's great. Tom Piekunka, so I should throw that out there.
Good job.
Yes, and then, but also, we get into wind and solar energy for the, capturing the sun to make energy. So, it's all these things put together. We just kind of try to, wrap them all up and be your one-stop shopping store. So,
All right, and Pete really is kind of our expert in terms of when we talk about mysimplygreenenergy.com. Pete, if folks go there, they can find a lot of information, and I think you've even said that, you visit the site often, and you learn more from previous shows that you've been able to listen to.
Well, there's mysimplygreenenergy.com is the parent website. There you'll see illustrations of some of the technologies that we talk about. At the top of the homepage is a link that invites you to listen to the radio show. That will switch you over to our YouTube channel, where you can listen to all the shows that we've done, tonight's show and each show thereafter. And you can listen to the shows as they're recorded, one segment at a time. Or you can listen to the show in its entirety. And I like to fire it up and minimize my screen and keep surfing and read the newspaper, and it's just like listening to the radio show. But if there's a key point of interest I want to share with a friend, I can give them a link to a specific segment within the show. And guess what? Even a deaf person can now listen, because there's a beta program on YouTube right now that transcribes all of the audio. So as we're speaking on this thing, the words are popping up on screen. Now, it misses a lot, okay, because it's voice recognition software and it's all experimental, but you get the gist of what we're talking about. So even if you can't listen to the radio in real time, you can listen to the show on the internet, even if you're deaf.
That's fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's good stuff.
And I just thought you liked hearing yourself again on the radio.
Yeah. I like reading your gobbledygook, I'll tell you that.
It's all good.
Well, let me ask the home repair expert, and I'm not throwing you under the bus here. I ask this with all due respect. And, but sure. You had mentioned to me off air that, how do I say this in a nice way? Maybe you don't know a lot about what we're speaking about, but you're fascinated by it.
Absolutely fascinated by it. And the wheels are coming off the whole energy world.
Absolutely.
So people are excited and scared at the same time to come up with some newer and more green ways of generating energy. Everybody's goal should be to get off the grid. Well, that may not be possible, but all of these things are supplemental to try to help. Wind, photovoltaic, solar issues, geothermal, which is fascinating. And people don't understand how it works. How you can take heat from the dirt and bring it into your house and heat your house and have it work all winter long, no matter what the temperature
That's
is.
right.
Fascinating.
And then cool your house in the summertime.
Yeah.
And be able,
I'm sorry. Guess what I learned today? Con Edison, the energy supplier for New York City, they have a rate increase of 4% coming up, plus an additional 12% for maintenance costs on nuclear reactors, and they just denied the Niagara hydroelectric system. They denied them access to bring wires from. They were going to bring wiring from Niagara Falls, and they were going to bring them down from Quebec. Because they have hydroelectric power, and they were going to bring them down into New York City. So after years of geological surveys, after years of environmental impact studies, after years of aligning easements for these overhead wires, all of a sudden, we're not going to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to bump you 16% if you live in New York City. Isn't that great? So,
I think they need some windmills.
Well, when you talk about
solar-voltaic panels,
you hear a lot of politicians, and they'll say, well, this green thing, it's not enough, it's not enough, it's not. No, it's not enough. It's not enough to handle all of industry. It's not enough to handle all of your transportation needs. But you're putting a dent in it.
Well,
you're supplementing the grid is what you're doing.
And Pete, the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time. If we, my goal is to get everybody to net zero energy in their homes, and every house that we take off the grid, that's one less house that lessens the demand on the grid.
Even if you take part of a house off the grid,
exactly,
it's still a help.
All good.
Oil's up 27% in 3 weeks. Okay, because of Libya. And 20% of that 27
and that's
is
just on
the
fear.
speculators. Yeah,
that's
20% of that is fear. 7% of that is shortage. Now the guy's going broke because we got all this money. We got $60 billion of his all tied up, so he can't get to it, and he's going broke. So everybody's a little nervous right now.
I did a little show prep this week in
Yeah.
anticipation of this.
All right.
And
I was hoping you would.
I went on mysimplegreenenergy.com and did some research on some wind generating equipment. There's a piece of equipment, a Falcon windmill, that can generate 12 kilowatts of electricity. Now, I use 35 at my house. 12 is not quite half, but that's where it begins, with that type of thing, or a photo array on a building that faces south or whatever. And some of those photo arrays are so fascinating. They're actually, I don't know what you call them. They adjust to, what do you call that?
Yeah, well,
they adjust to where
right. They follow the sun, basically.
Like the old antennas used to work on the rooftop. They automatically adjust.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
All right, now we normally have Brenna kind of giving us a stat or two, or kind of a
little
tip,
factoids,
and
things like
and
this.
I guess I'll leave it up to any the three of you to come up with something. Or I know Pete, you've mentioned a few statistics already, but
well, I'll give you one about water, if that's okay.
All right.
I was reading about California's waterways, and California's got a real problem right now in the San Joaquin Valley. The San Joaquin Valley is low-lying land. It's a valley. And if you think about water running through a valley with all of its tributaries, it creates a lot of little islands. Okay, so about 150 years ago, the farmers, they built something like 1,500 dams to dam off these tributaries so they'd have one continuous piece of farmland. Well, these things are starting to break down, and the real fear right now is that if these dikes, levees break down because they're made of peat moss and sand,
that's not very.
They're made by farmers,
right,
okay,
right.
150 years ago, with horses and plows, and they didn't even have tractors, right? If these things break down, what's going to happen is the fresh water coming through the San Joaquin is going to mix with salt water. So now they have to shut down the water distribution plants because they can't handle desalination.
Right.
Okay, so about half of California is going to get thrown back in the 1890s. So that's what right now, every day they're checking these levees. They're looking for slumping, and they're looking for, sinkholes, and everybody's really nervous right now.
Thank goodness we live in the Great Lakes.
I'm telling you, you have no idea how lucky
Yeah,
we
we
are
don't-
here.
And there's a
have
lot
no
of people
idea.
wanting to steal them, too.
Exactly.
Right.
So what do you, how do people begin? They call you or send you an
they send
email, and
us
you
an
go out to
email,
their
call
house
us.
and you look around? And how's that all
Absolutely.
work?
Well, it usually starts with an energy audit.
Okay.
Is really where it starts, and but they certainly can send us an email, give us a call, and we go from there basically, and we certainly would find out what the homeowner's interested in, whether it be solar, voltaic, or wind, or geothermal. And but again, it does, Jim, that's a great question. It really does all start out with an energy audit and where they're get the most bang for their buck, so to speak. And sometimes it's insulating or new windows, or it's amazing.
Right. And you have to be careful that the house is safe. If you've got a house like with mold,
Right.
and you make it too tight, you're only going to make the mold problem worse. So it has to be tight and safe.
Right.
And then you can get into your geothermal or your solar. And it's interesting. Each of our guests, I remember Chuck from Total Heat.
Right.
First you got to get the house tight. Then he sizes his system. We talked to Mike Parks about photovoltaic, and his thing was you reduce your
minimizing the demand.
Changing your light bulbs and all that before you size your system. So as we talk to different experts, it's all about first you start with the whole house, the envelope, then you minimize the demand on whatever technology they're going to implement, and then you size your system.
Well, that's it, because
That's the thread I'm getting.
with let's say with a geothermal system, if you have an old drafty house,
Right.
you're going to need such a huge system that it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be cost effective.
Right.
So again, Jim, the whole idea is you start with start with the envelope, make it as tight as you possibly can and well insulated, and and make sure that the air quality is there, and then you size your system.
Mo and Pete, because we got about 2 minutes here before we got to go to break, but let's bring it closer to home tonight in terms of what we're going to be talking about. Obviously, Tom Piekunka is our guest. He is an engineer who specializes in geothermal products.
Right.
What are we going to be talking about here tonight?
Well, hopefully he's going to enlighten all of our listeners about exactly how geothermal works. And he is, again, the engineer. He's the guy that I go to when we have a challenging job and say, hey man, put a system together and enlighten us. And that's what he does. So he'll be able to get into. Hopefully we'll have some callers call in and with some good questions, and he'll have all the answers for us, I'm sure.
Pete, anything you wanted to add? Let me add 222-1180, the number to call for people.
That's a good idea.
That was a good segue there, Mo.
Well,
222-1180. Again, that number 222-1180 if you do want to join in on the conversation. Again, we will try and take your call as we come back from the break. But I just wanted to give you a minute or two just to...
Well, when we've had previous shows on geothermal, we've talked to installers, we've talked to investors, and talked about their return on the money. And as I was saying off air before we went on, one of the things we haven't mentioned in either of those two shows, I mean, a geothermal system looks a lot like a furnace, a standard furnace, but there's no flame. There's no flame.
Okay.
Think about that. These things use heat pumps, and if my best description of a heat pump is looking at the back of a refrigerator. Very similar parts, and a heat pump and refrigeration. And I'm going to talk to Tom about this. It's like the same thing, only in different directions. It's like a refrigerator in reverse, so to speak. Many of the same principles apply.
Yeah,
and that's essentially what a heat pump is. That's my understanding.
Yeah. That's right, Pete. And again, Tom will certainly enlighten us on the rest of it. But some of the side effects, some of the other things, the benefits that you get with it is, and I know talking with Chuck Strang, who was on one of our guests, he also works with us, is the fact that there's no static electricity in the wintertime. It reduces it because, again, you don't have an open flame and just things that you'd never think about. So there's no static. It's really nice. It's real comfortable air.
222-1180, the number to call if you want to join in on the conversation. Again, that number 222-1180. This is Simply Green Radio, brought to you by Simply Green Energy and Mr. Ruger Plumbing, a website that you can visit, folks, mysimplygreenenergy.com. Again, mysimplygreenenergy.com. In studio with Maurice Aubry, Mo, Pete Morisi, True Story Pete, and also filling in for Brenna Hartman is our home repair expert, Jim Salmon. He is, of course, a home inspector here in the Rochester area, and he's been on WHAM for more than 22 years. So good to have Jim's expertise here in studio tonight. We do need to cut away for a quick break, but we'll be back with more of Simply Green Radio here on News Radio 1180 WHAM.